Hello everybody, it's Andrew from the Party Meeple workshop. I'm in need of a project of some sort, something to do. So I thought I'd make some little trays for board game bits and pieces, or even like card shoe. And what I thought I'd do is, rather than use the stuff I have in my workshop regularly, because I have a nice workshop here with a whole bunch of useful tools. There's a table saw and drills and grinders and lathes and stuff. So I'm lucky enough to be fairly well equipped, but I want to see if I can make this in a way that someone who doesn't have all this stuff can achieve. You know, like, here's the challenge. Spend a few dollars, and not very many, and make yourself some board game parts trays. Instead of all the stuff, here's what we're going to use. First of all, let's introduce what we're going to make it out of. This is 3mm MDF, which is medium density fibre wood, basically tough cardboard, I guess, but it's very easy to work with. So, and it's, I think, about $11 for a full sheet. And a full sheet is quite large. It's 2.4 by 1.2 meters. So you could probably make 30 trays if you bought a full sheet. Luckily, hardware stores sell it in smaller pieces, and this is just a bit of offcut. But this is the main tool that you're going to need. This is a jigsaw. They're used for cutting round curves, hence the term jigsaw, because, you know, jigsaws have curves of them. But I default to DeWalt with my hand tools, which may not be everyone's cup of tea. But if you only wanted to spend a few dollars, you can buy a cheap Chinese version of one of these tools for, like, you know, $20 probably, or 30 bucks. And this is the only power tool that I'm going to use in this project. You're going to need some clamps. You can probably use clothes pegs for what I'm going to use these for, but these are my little gluing clamps, holding clamps that I have, so that's what I'm using. We're going to use PVA wood glue, which is the snotty white glue that you use for gluing paper and woody type stuff and crafts. This glue needs a fairly neat mating surface, so like the two surfaces need to not have too many gaps or wobbles in them. So we have a way around that, because the jigsaw is not great at cutting straight lines, but we have a way around that. I have an aerosol can of spray adhesive here, just regular spray adhesive, and what I'm going to use that for is to glue these bits of paper onto this, so I have outlines to cut around. These bits of paper, or this PDF, is uploaded to the Party Meeple webpage, so if you want to do this, you can just download it, use the spray adhesive to glue the paper onto this, and you don't have to do any marking out. All you have to do is cut around the outside of the line. And then at the end of the job, this is like a $3 can of gloss black spray paint, just to finish things off. One more thing we need. A sanding block. Now this is important. This is some 80 grit sandpaper, and it's glued to a flat bit of wood. And that means you can sand things by hand on this. This MDF is quite soft to sand, and you will get a nice straight edge by basically, you know, rubbing that along like that. And that's all you're going to need to do the project. Pretty affordable, probably less than 50 bucks all up, maybe. Now, maybe a little bit more depending on how expensive your paint is, because a can of aerosol paint can cost a few dollars. Alright, so the first thing we have to do is use our fully in the shadows spray adhesive to stick our patterns to our piece of MDF we're using. Probably should have pointed out, this is 3mm thick MDF, medium density fiberboard. I think it's something that the Kiwis invented, actually. It's basically just heavy cardboard compressed together wood stuff, whatever you want to call it, but it's very good for making little projects out of. It's very bland looking, so you're not going to get any wood grain or anything like you would with plywood or something like that. but it costs bugger all. So it's a very good thing to use for your little projects at home. A full sheet of this, 2.4 meters by 1.2, is about $25 Australian. Dollary dues, I believe is the term. And you can make a lot of stuff out of that. And even if you don't get your stuff right and you have to throw some stuff away while you're getting your cutting down pat, you're not going to be too far out of pocket. So what we're going to do is we have our printouts here, and let's see, can we get that to focus? Somewhere there. We're going to have these available for download as a PDF on the Party Meeple webpage. We're just going to spray the backs of them with our adhesive and let that tack off for a bit, and then stick them to the MDF. I've actually put, you'll notice, a little bit of scrap paper down here to, this stuff, down here to like catch the overspray, because this stuff here, actually any aerosol product, being paint or glue or whatever, makes a hell of a mess if you're not careful with it. So inside the workshop here, I'm in plenty of open air because, it smells bad and breathing it in isn't good for you. And like if there was a draft in here, the glue overspray for this would make other things sticky. But for this moment, I think we'll be okay. Experience talking there. So we're just going to put a light coating on the backs of the sheets. A light coating on the backs of the sheets. I just didn't hear the first time. There we are. And then all we do, just move that to one side. If you want to use this stuff permanently, like if you're making a game board and you've printed out a nice, graphic of something on a piece of paper and you want to put it on something like this for a game board, you would spray both surfaces, let them tack off, and then lay them together, and it would be a permanent bond. This won't be a permanent bond. You just spray one side, stick it down like this, and that'll peel off or sand off quite nicely when we've finished using it as our guide for cutting stuff out. You can see that. That's, where we are, down there somewhere. That's actually stuck quite well to that. See that? Very nice. And now all we have to do, cut around the lines. Alrighty, let's talk about jigsaw blades. These are the blades that go in this tool that cut the wood. Now, as you can see, they have teeth on them. And if you look at these blades at the end here, the teeth actually have a facing. They face up. They're like facing that way. This is obviously a long blade for cutting through stuff that's thick. You would have to be fairly patient. Jigsaws really don't chew things like circular saws do. So if you're cutting through some thick hardwood, you would need to be a bit patient. Don't push the tool too hard, and probably your wrist will tell you if you're trying too hard, or the smoke coming out of the tool. This one here is like a flat blade that's a little bit wider. So this is the one we're going to use because we're going to be able to cut in a straight line easier with that than one I'm going to show later. These two here are for laminate, and if you look at them, the teeth on them are symmetrical. I'm not sure if the camera is showing this. Hopefully it is. This one, once again, better for straight lines. This one here, you can see it's quite narrow. That's because this is for going around curves. And this blade on the end, which has tiny, tiny teeth and is, I suspect, made out of a slightly different steel, is one for cutting metal. Actually, its fitting is for my old jigsaw. It won't go in this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to select this blade here, which is nice and wide, and probably our best bet for cutting in a straight line. So the next thing we're going to do, we've got all our parts cut out and they're labelled so we can't confuse them. Even though we're missing the back, can't miss the back. So we're going to peel our guide paper off them. And you can see it goes pretty well. This one here. So this is not a bad way of, like, you know, marking out work. If you draw it on a bit of paper, use some spray adhesive. Yeah, he said, now we've got one that's a bit of a, there we go, there it is. To remember what that was now. It was something. This is obviously a bit of scrap, so I'll just clean that up a little bit. Makes things a bit better. So the next thing is to put, how did I get that wrong? That totally meant to be cut off there. More cutting to do. So maybe I'll use this one first. The plan is, where are we? Here we go. To glue this like, both of them are wrong, Andrew. I need to fix this. Now let's not confuse all that. Time to do some fixing. So I'm just going to line the other piece up with this piece. And they're not quite the same dimensions, but they're pretty damn close. And I will use one of our spring clamps to, like, just hold that on there. And get the default DeWalt back into action. I think we're good. I will just, I'm using this straight edge now. Actually, I'll put the other one over there somewhere. You see, I can use that to clean these up. So now we're good. Now we're good to carry on. Peel off the guide sticker, we'll call it. And I'll see you at the gluing desk. Okay, so these are the ends of the part rack. And what I'm going to do is glue a barrier on the end here because it makes a nice little lip for our base unit to tuck into when we're gluing it all together. Because, like, and it also makes a nice little lip for the back unit to go on. Like that. That's 6mm there. At 6mm there, it's going to glue onto the end of that much more nicely. So we have a right hand and a left hand, like that. These need to be glued together, so let's do that. Got our little PVA here, and you have to glue it so that, yeah. Now how am I going to turn the camera off with glue on my fingers? Blah. So we need to glue it so that the back edge here is flush, and we want that to be clean around through there. So we'll scrap that off with a bit of scrap. And the top edge. Just going to line this up as best we can. So there's one edge. To make sure this one goes the other way, like that. Maybe you won't put quite so much on this one, hey? So the last one made quite the mess. Give it a squidge around to spread the glue around the place. PVA glue, when you're using it on wood like this, actually sets fairly quickly. So I can pretty much get that flush there. There we are. A left and a right. See you when the glue's dried. So we're back with our two end pieces. Here's the base, somewhere down there, base. So the base goes down here. The two end pieces go on like that-ish, and the back goes on like that. So I'm going to glue this all together. Remember I talked about clamping? There's not going to be a lot, but we're going to do something just to help it all hang together. So, get our glue going. And you glue along the bottom edge of this to go in there. Stay, or not. Glue along here, and that'll go in there. Now you're thinking, this is going to stick to the paper. You're damn right it is, but that's okay. We're just going to peel it off when the glue's dry, and it'll just sand. We're obviously going to give it a sand up before we paint it. So, you know, if this sticks to the paper, I'm okay with that. So we need some little weights now to hold that. These are some little steel ballasts I use when I'm welding. And I just put that in there so the end lines up. And probably a good ½ kilo each. So now that's in, we can put the back on. Glue around the edge of it. Like so. And on she goes. Push the base into the back properly. Like so. And there we are. Now you can see there's a little bit of glue dribble down in here somewhere. So what we'll do, we're just going to run our finger through there. Oops, that wasn't quite right. All the way around, just to put a fillet on there. One of the wonderful things about PVA glue is it's actually water soluble. So I think what I'm going to do, so I have a damp rag here that I prepared earlier. I'm just going to clean up our gluing job with this bit of damp rag. Come on, Andrew. There we go. Making sure the ends line up. And there we are. 20 minutes time, 30 minutes time on a warmish day. That will be ready to glue the ramp on the front and these little fellas in here. Let it set overnight, bit of a sand, bit of spray paint. We'll have a little parts tray. Okay, we're back. As you can see, we've torn this off. You can see the paper stuck to it, but that's okay. We just basically tore it away. Forgot to turn the camera on before I did it. So now we'll peel the back of this off. Probably should have done it before we did this, but whatever. Now the glue here is actually fairly green, so I'm not going to, abuse this too much, because the PVA glue will take a little bit longer before it gets its balls together and hangs on proper. But yeah, we'll get that with sandpaper once the glue's dry. Anyway, so the next thing to do is to fit the ramp that goes in there like that. You can see it's going to have a place where you can draw the bits out. Now, I was actually going to sand this joint at a slight angle, but I don't know that I will. I'm pretty happy with how that is. I'm just going to sand this a little bit because that's not quite square, and that'll help. Probably all it's going to take. We will pull this off though. Put this in like that. Looks pretty good. So even though we cut this out with a jigsaw, that joint's not too bad, is it? Seen worse things at sea. Probably should put the rough side on the outside, because the outside will be the easier one to sand when it's all dry. Anyway, let's get this glued in. So we're going to put some glue down here, same on the other side. Once it's in, we'll run a little dribble along the back edge there. Use our wet rag to clean it all out. Woo! I can know. Now I said this glue doesn't fill up gaps very well, and it doesn't. We're going to ask it to there, which it won't want to do, but there you go. Once again, we'll get our damp rag and do a little wipe across the top there, wipe there, and then we'll clean up the inside. After I've cleaned this up with this rag, I'm going to just rinse the rag out in water so that it doesn't dry hard, because it's useful to have a damp rag when you're using PVA. So that's cleaned up this out of the way. It's cleaned up the ramp area. Pretty spot on. In she goes. Well, that looks awful. Hang on. Square her up a bit, hey? There we go. Do the t'other one. We don't need any on that edge. Damp rag again. Here we go. Gluing it just off shot, hey? Keeping you in suspense. Okay, there we are. Try and get them looking about right. Leave that to dry. Give it a bit of sand. And you can see there's a few parts here, like here. It's got a pointer here. You can see there's a few parts like here and here where these are a little bit high. Once this is all dry, I'll get some fairly coarse paper, dress up all the edges so they're neat, and then give it a fine sand. A spray paint. Should look pretty good. A good little project for a gamer who wants to do a little bit of DIY stuff. So here we are back in the shed again. You can see the glue is dried. That's pretty reasonably sound. It's not the most beautiful looking job, but you know, being a bit agricultural on this. So I want to clean up a few of these like edges and things that are like down here. You can see that there's like dag off there. That's not quite right. These sort of overhang a bit. So what I'm going to do is I have a flat surface here. This is like a bit of tin, but you could use a chopping board or whatever. Go give this a rub. Because I'm using a flat surface, it like means that everything I rub will be flat. The paper I'm using is 80 grit, so quite coarse. And that has improved those edges pretty well. You notice I jabbed myself. I remember watching a movie years ago where someone asked to look at someone else's hands, and on doing so said, "This man has never worked a day in his life." Well, I'm not sure I have either, really. But I have hands that might fool somebody. So I'm just going to use a blade. What I've done is I've folded a little bit of metal around a Stanley knife blade so I can push it with my finger. And we'll just use that to get this off. I should have pulled this off yesterday before the glue became too effective. Shouldn't be working towards my other hand. So I'll spin this round and work this way. And we're there. So now I'm going to get some finer sandpaper and just sand it by hand, and then we'll give it some paint. It's not very new, this paper, but I'm too tight to like tear a new bit off the roll. This is 120 grit, which is like medium, I guess you'd call it. That's what I'd call medium. And so I can get it in here, I'm going to fold it up a bit. And that way, I can get in here, take the hard edges off, because they'll get knocked off anyway by handling. Like that. If you're doing a lot of sanding, put some latex gloves on so you don't sand the tip of your fingers away. But this is only a small amount, so I'm not going to bother with that. But yeah, you'll make your fingers raw. You'll make your fingers raw if you don't protect your hands. As I say, if I was doing more sanding, I would totally go and put some latex nitrile, the black tough gloves on that it's hard to put holes in. This is just a dust up, baby. You can see this MDF actually sands very easily. It's much more forgiving than normal timber. Sort of like a wood for cheats. Okay, and there is our little parts tray. You can make one. Next stop, bit of spray paint. So here we are back at the spray booth, and I'm just using a can of really, really cheap gloss black, although its idea of gloss and mine is a bit different. I use this on a few things. Spray paint. You could undercoat this first, but it's a game component that's going to hang around on the table under some brightly coloured bits of wood and plastic, so let's not worry too much about that. I've put a fresh sheet of scrap paper down because, going to make a bit of sense. Also opened up, where are we? I've opened up the door back here, there, so I've got a bit of air through here because once again, using some aerosol stuff, there's no wind per se, but I would, you know, want to be able to breathe. Here we go. First coat's a bit of just a mist coat, as in mist, not as in failed to hit. Spray cans, you shake the living bejesus out of them because you need to mix the paint up well. And that's all for a first coat. You never put too much paint on from a spray can because it blocks up. And when you've finished, you hold the can upside down and clean the nozzle out. Otherwise, the next time you go to use this little bugger, it'll be blocked up. So, after the sanding and a few coats of paint, we've ended up with our little tray, and well, it's not a work of art, but I'm really happy with it. My only regret is I only made one. So I've got the saw sled out on the table saw. We're going to get cutting and we'll see how many of them we can make in a couple of hours. So here we are with our little trays, and I have to say, they're not perfect, but I had quite a lot of fun making them, and you should try as well, because there's no reason, this is not a hard project, there's no reason for you not to have a go at this, and they're great little trays that you can fit all sorts of board gaming parts, coins, cubes. They're actually the right size for settlers cards, so that you can use them as a card shoe even. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you're interested in this sort of thing, subscribe to the Party Meeple channel, and you know, every once in a while I'll post a video that you'll hopefully find interesting or useful.